Normally, a slam is run as follows. Normally, it's a live event, and people just put their name in a basket or a hat. And we rummage through the hat, and we select tellers at random, and they would get up on stage and tell a story, excuse me, based on the theme, again, which tonight is Out Loud and Proud, supporting LGBTQ+. So tonight, things are a little bit different. We are curating the event. So we have contacted most of the tellers tonight. They've let us know basics of what they're telling tonight, and we have put them in order ourselves. So what is a story? This is very, very important. And then I love this part. So stories must be true, personal stories that happen to the teller, not to your brother, sister's, grandmother's neighbor. It has to be a true story that happened to you personally. Tellers should be addressing the theme in some way, which is out loud and proud. Normally we say no notes, instruments, props, or costumes. We're allowing notes because we're doing this remotely and we're trying to attract a little bit larger of an audience of tellers. So we thank you for that. Normally we adhere to a 5-minute limit, and then you get 60 seconds to kind of wrap your story up. We're not adhering to the timeline tonight, and stories are not being judged tonight. We're trying to be very inclusive. But stories really do need to have some sort of structure. They need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, kind of an arc. They need to have a point. Let me see. When you're done telling, we ask the tellers to either say thank you, to let us know that their story is over, or say, and that is my story, so that we can all clap and congratulate them on a story well told. So tonight, those of you on Facebook or just on Zoom, all you're seeing right now as our panelists. There's only 5 up there right now. We'll have others joining as we come along. We can't see you out there in Facebook and in Zoom land unless you're a panelist. We can't hear you either. You can hear us and see us. We are going to be leaving the sound on all of our panelists so that we can hear when they laugh or when they groan. As part of the story, feedback is very, very important to the teller when they're telling. They need to know how the story is being received by their audience. So the sound will be left unmuted. To the panelists, which are tellers, we ask you to please mind that your sound is on. Be careful of any background noise that you're going to be having going on tonight. Yes, no judges. I don't know. I think that's about it for all of the logistics. Anything else that you would like to add? Obviously, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Janae Sparks, and my counterpart is Nessa Goldman.
Oh, you can't see me. Hey guys.
And we discovered storytelling 2-3 years ago, and that's actually how we met. Nessa is my best friend, absolute best friend in the world, and we were very fortunate enough to be able to volunteer ourselves and take over the Story Slam that was originally created by the Clallam County Story People, or the Story People of Clallam County, I should say that correctly. So we've kind of taken it from there. We've been hosting for about 2 years now, and we're excited to bring you our tellers tonight. Our first teller is Max. He is a local playwright. He has done a play called Stages at OTA, which was extremely moving. His plays focus on social causes. He's now working on a play that is turned into a film because of COVID, which is very fortunate. This film is going to be called Missing Red Girls, which highlights missing Native women. So Max, it is your turn to tell a story. Thank you.
Hang on, I'm going to, you probably are still looking at Janae, and you're hearing Nessa's voice, very confusing. I'm going to spotlight Max's video and our transition. I promise we'll get better. But please, if you're a panelist, we'll give a round of applause to Max. And if you're in the audience, you can type into the chat. And Max, you have the stage.
You're very kind, and I feel super honored being the first person on this virtual Zoom Out Loud Story Slam. This is so cool. So back then, my grandmother would say, if I saw a faggot dying of thirst on our front yard. I wouldn't even let him drink out of our hose. My brother, he said the government should gather all the gay people, put them on an island, and blow them up. Back then, they'd laugh at me because I brought my Little Pony to show and tell. Back then in high school, they would write faggot on my locker and called me names when I walked down the hallway. But of course, they waited till all their buddies were with them. Back then, when I was on a lunch break at work, my older Christian coworker proclaimed in front of all the employees that she was going to pray for me so that I wouldn't be gay anymore. Back then, my sister told me that she would march in the gay pride parade with me. But now she votes for Trump. Back then, my brother stopped talking to me and his fiance barked at me. How can you be gay? I thought you were a Christian, in an email. I answered back, you've been having premarital sex with my brother for over a decade. I thought you were a Christian. Way back then, they were arresting gay and trans people for simply existing. They were beaten for merely existing. Their pictures were taken and put in newspapers so their employers would fire them and their wives would leave them. And back then, after years of torment and abuse, my people fought back. And they fought back. They fought the attackers. They fought the police, who were the worst of the attackers. They flipped cars and lit shit on fire, not because they wanted to. It's because they had to. Because no one listened. And no one cared. And no one helped. Now, I am free because of these strong trailblazers. Because of a Black trans woman, Marsha P. Johnson, and a Latina trans woman, Sylvia Rivera. I am free and I am proud. And now, over 50 years later, this so-called president kicked all the trans military members out from serving our country. They fought for this country. And they did not complain of shin splints. And now, I turn the TV on and I see someone who should be leading this country by example. Instead, he's surrounding himself with people who believe in conversion therapy. Like I'm broken. Like we're broken. But let me tell you something about us. We are fighters and we're resilient. And we know who we are. We are whole, beautiful, and proud. And now I look at these young people coming out of the closet. I see these young people who are braver than I was, living their most genuine lives, and it inspires me. It feels like a million years ago when I finally mustered the courage to tell my father that I was gay at 21 years old. And I'll never forget his sweet reply. I always wondered when I would buy you those My Little Ponies, but I love you, my son. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Max.
Good job, Max.
Thank you.
Ooh, beautiful.
Spotlight you.
Oh, okay. Back to me. Thank you very much. Max, for telling.
Thank
We
you.
always appreciate you when you come. You
Be
always
very
tell very heartfelt stories. We appreciate it. Our next teller is Carlos. He is a local activist and educator. He is extremely active in all social justice causes in our community. I thank Carlos for all of our lightning conversations when he has helped me evolve as a person. I know that our opinions differ on many subjects, but the education, I think, for both of us is always very welcome. I look forward to hearing your story. Everybody, please welcome Carlos.
And wait till you see yourself, Carlos.
Yep.
There
There you go.
Oh,
Welcome.
man, I wasn't expecting to be that close. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's somehow more nerve-wracking here than live. I don't know why.
Because you can see yourself.
Right? Let's see. Let's see. You spick, why don't you learn some English? You wetback, go back to your country. You illegal, you beaner, you fathead, you undocumented, you burden on our tax system. This was all the shit that I heard growing up in America. Moving here as a 5-year-old Colombian, this was the relationship that I had with America and its culture. Its red, white, and blue flag, mainly the white part, telling me that I didn't belong. Growing up in this willfully hateful and exclusive American culture really just enhanced my Colombian nationalism. And that was the identity that I took on. And I was super proud to be Colombian. And I thought that was unique. And then I looked at all the kids on the block and everyone was proud to be Jamaican, Honduran, Nicaraguan, whatever it was. So I evolved and really I gave up that Colombian title and I was a proud immigrant. We were all proud immigrants. We were proud illegal immigrants. And that was the new identity that I took on. And that was mainly my identity up until I was a senior in high school. And it was so much my identity that that's how I became involved in social justice. I don't know if you guys remember, but I think around 2001, we had huge movements and mobilizations across America for immigrant rights. From east to west coast, thousands upon hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people came out in support for immigrant rights, and I was one of them. Myself, my brother, 4 high school friends, we downloaded a flyer. We didn't know whose flyer it was, but we knew they were for immigrant rights, and we went out and we marched. That was contagious, and we decided to organize for the May Day mobilization, which was the biggest immigrants' rights mobilization here in America, International Workers' Day, May 1st. It was a huge rally in Union Square, and we were gonna forget that we lived in Queens, so we decided to have an event in Jackson Heights, Queens, about 7 miles from Union Square. And it was just holding hands in unity for immigrants. That's all we did. In one block, there was about 100 people holding hands. Everything was so joyous. It was a beautiful sunny day. It was the most positive energy I felt ever, I think, in the United States. It was a life-changing day. And it was beautiful, like I said, joyous, a celebratory atmosphere. And then roll in the NYPD, the New York Pig Department, as we like to call it back then. Still do. And they rolled up with 2 paddy wagons, 1 on each street, cornering us in on the block. And these paddy wagons were special because they had these 2 cylindrical poles. And in those poles were these orange netting, basically like a corral, that they would use. ICE would use this a lot during their immigrant raids. And they would block off 15th Street and 16th Street, let's say, for example, and everyone stuck in that street was getting arrested. Didn't matter if you were documented or not, if you were doing anything or not, if you were existing on that street as a human being, you were being put in cuffs. Growing up in an illegal immigrant neighborhood, I already knew what was going on. So we had hundreds of people there, a lot of illegal immigrants, and we didn't want them to get arrested. So, 17-year-old badasses, we just broke through the barricades and started a march. We marched all the way to Union Square. Not one person got arrested. On our way to Union Square, 4 hours later, we stopped at every single store demanding they shut down the store and get the immigrants out there to join our march. By the time we ended up in Union Square, we had about 500 people. Some stores closed, some stores didn't. I say all this because when we got to Union Square, I got to meet members of the PSL, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And that was really the life-changing moment for me. You see, I grew up knowing about Black struggle, immigrant struggle, Native struggle, name the social justice cause, and I was educating myself on it. But I grew up in an immigrant, Latino, chauvinist, machista, hip hop, urban, not gay friendly community. And the LGBT struggle was never spoken about, never. Only until I joined the PSL and we started getting our classes, our candidacy educationals, learning about social justice, did I learn about this Stonewall Inn, this amazing bar with amazing people that decided to fight for justice that one day that started what we know now as Pride. The Stonewall Inn was taught to me through socialists, through communists. And through this upbringing, through this leadership that I've learned from, I became a new identity. It was no longer Colombian, it was no longer immigrant, but I was a socialist, operating out of the offices in Harlem on 135th Street and Adam Clayton Powell. And Adam Clayton Powell was the first Black congressman in New York State to be elected. He was a communist, member of the Communist Party, and his quote resonates with me till this day. The day will come when being called a communist will be the highest compliment in the land. I wait to see that day as I stand shoulder to shoulder, fighting with the LGBT community of out loud and proud communists. Thank you.
All right. Cool.
Thank you, Carlos. It's always good to hear your opinion and your stories. It's something that I have never experienced, which is why I always listen with rapt attention. Our next teller tonight is Stephen. Stephen is the creator of the Story Night in Bremerton. And it is a story slam that Nessa and I used to go to pre-COVID days. Anytime that we could, which I believe was the first Thursday of every month. Second Thursday.
That's correct. First Thursday.
And he has also competed on the Grand Slam Moth stage. The Moth is a storytelling slam that is put together by NPR. And it's something that kind of is a highlight for all of us that do storytelling. So please put your hands together for Stephen.
Just
one
a
second. 1 second, it takes us a second.
All right, Steve.
Waiting for that glorious moment where I see myself. Hi, everyone. It's good seeing you. Thanks for allowing me a spot here tonight. I'm going to start by saying I've never met a parent who said, I love my kid, but I wish they were a different gender. And I've never said it myself, but when we got a note from our oldest kid that said, I am transgender, I was relieved. I've kind of given away the ending a little bit there. So step back with me a little bit. This starts with my mother. My mother was an only child. And when she started having kids of her own, she always wanted a girl. And by the time she was 22, she had 2 boys, was told she wouldn't be having any other children. And 8 years later, I arrived. And so she had 3 children, all boys. When I was in about 1st grade, I remember her asking, would you like to have a little sister? And I'm sure I said, fine. My parents were seriously considering adopting. And if I know my parents as well as I think I do, I'm sure it was the cost of raising another child and going through adoption that probably stopped them. And so she pinned all her hopes on her boys to deliver her a granddaughter. And my brothers had between them 4 children, all boys. And it looked like they were not going to have any more. And so it fell on me to fulfill my mother's wishes. And Diana announced that she was pregnant, and we invited my mother to the ultrasound. And I don't think it'll surprise anybody to hear there was a rooting interest when we got there. And my mother got the good news that we all got the great news that we were having a baby, and it would be a girl. And so this birth was highly anticipated and longed for, and my mom especially couldn't wait. My mother was supposed to be at the birth, but she had been feeling ill, so she didn't think she wanted to drive down. It's about 45 miles down a canyon to get to the hospital where the baby would be born. And the birth was incredibly difficult. If not for skilled doctors, Diana and our baby could easily have died. And I was explaining this on the phone afterwards to my mother, and I could hear her crying. And I wasn't always the most understanding kid about my mother crying. I wasn't very patient with that. But in this moment, I was touched. I was just telling the story matter-of-factly, and it was moving her to tears. I was moved even more when a couple hours later, she showed up with my dad. And my dad said, she told him, if they can go through all that, I can make it down the canyon. So there we have a picture of my mother holding the sum of all of her dreams coming true, her granddaughter. And 2 weeks later, she found out that she had been sick because she had stomach cancer. And 2 weeks after that, she died.
Oh.
So her dream came true, and she had it for 27 days.
Oh.
And so this is what our child was born into. These were the expectations that we had. And I know that my mom would have loved this little kid. The smartest, and I don't say this as a proud parent. If you met this kid, you would agree, one of the smartest kids ever to grace this earth. Cheerful, loving, all of those things until puberty. And we expected that when puberty hit, there would be beginning of some distance. This is a natural thing. And on some level, you kind of look forward to it. But we had no idea. Remember, this is our first child. We had no idea it would be as bad as it was. And as we learned more and more, it shouldn't have been as bad as it was. There was a distance, and we would ask and ask and ask and could not learn anything because I don't think this kid knew what was going on. And then there were signs. We were dealing in mystery. Our kid wanted to emancipate themselves from us, and just a few months before, we had this magical relationship with this child that was turning to, I want nothing to do with this family anymore. And then the cutting started. And we got into a journal, and we learned that our oldest wished for the courage to kill themselves. We got him some counseling. And the counselor, after several sessions, says, we can keep doing this, but I got to tell you that we're not seeing any progress here. One day, my wife came to me and said, there's a letter for us. And I said, what does it say? And my wife said, you just have to go read this. And I was envisioning, I'm running away. I've successfully emancipated myself without my knowledge, whatever, that things were going to be awful. So when I read I am transgender, there were a lot of reasons that this was a relief. The biggest one was, at least now we know what the situation is. This letter also said, I was going to wait until I became an adult to do anything about this, but you're my parents and I love you. And this was another source of relief. Now, we knew nothing about transgender people. I had been a reporter and had written about issues involving the gay community for years. I was pretty well versed in that. We were a religious family in a religion that doesn't teach anyone to be unkind to gay people, or transgender people, but they're also not equal in the eyes of the God of this religion. And yet we knew things were going to be okay because at least we knew what was happening. And this was in 2012. This was before Caitlyn Jenner. We immersed ourselves in everything we had to learn from that point on, and I have since then enjoyed the process of raising a son. And this being 2012, I also was grateful in that moment that it wasn't when I was born, 1962 or even 1972, because I not only knew that my son had the right to hope for a fulfilling and relatively normal life, he had the right to expect it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I have been looking forward to hearing
Beautiful.
the story of your son for quite some time. So thank you very much for your bravery to tell that story. I know we talked about it, and it's hard because it feels like it's not your story to tell.
Right.
But I feel like you did a very good job telling it from your perspective as a parent, and something that's very hard at trying to navigate when you're not educated on that subject. So thank you very much for sharing that. I truly appreciate it. I am going to turn it over to Nessa because the next teller is actually something that was recorded from a friend from the UK, because it's 2 a.m. there. She had a fabulous story for us to hear. And go ahead.
So I'm taking over. Yeah, this is a friend of mine that I met while traveling internationally. And maybe this is the beauty of our new online platform where we all get to engage. Like I said, my parents are here, so hey, Mom and Dad. But I'm going to share. Her name is Cheryl Hickey. She is a dear friend of mine. I met her while traveling abroad, like I said, and we have met up here in the States as well. So panelists, and anybody else who feels like typing in the chat box, give a round of applause for Cheryl Hickey. And I believe we can see her. We can see her. All right, here we go.
One of the happiest times in my life was a time when I had less than £200 in the bank. I had no plan, no agenda, no job, and no man. I was completely broke and floating around. I was also on the complete opposite side of the world, alone, further away than I'd ever been in my life. I was traveling solo in New Zealand. When I first arrived, my head spun with how beautiful and raw the country was. Big looming valleys under skies studded with stars. I felt like I could get in touch with my feral self as soon as I arrived, but I had absolutely nobody to do this with. Soon, things started to fall into place. I got a working holiday visa and a job offer, and slowly my confidence that New Zealand had accepted me grew certain. I felt like that was where I was meant to be. I spent months climbing, cycling, snowboarding. I worked as a massage therapist, and I had no downtime. I was the most active I've ever been, and it was so bloody cold all over winter that I'd been covered head to toe for months. Even in my own bedroom, I hadn't seen my body. And one day I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and hold the phone. I took a look at myself and was like, this is the most toned and healthy I've ever looked. And I just felt like one thing was missing to appreciate that. And that one thing was a man. And I had a string of extremely unfulfilling relationships. All I was after really was some appreciation and connection with someone else. But instead, I just felt more isolated. I didn't have any real girl mates to kiss and tell to. Something was missing and things felt meaningless. The toxicity of the relationships totally rattled me. One in particular, I found myself caught up with a man who didn't want to build me up. just wanting to tear me down, until the time finally came when I decided to just hone in on my strength and put myself first and love myself. So I ran out in a flurry at 5 a.m. and slammed my foot on that pedal and did not look back, leaving him to eat my dust. Relationships can boost your body confidence, and but when they snap, crackle and pop, you sink to the bottom of the bowl. But I had a fresh boost in finances, a new van, a big fat healthy dose of determination to seek fun, freedom and adventures. And it was the start of summer, and what was around the corner was pure therapy. I escaped to a pretty squatty climbers campsite, climbed rocks every day and swam in the river to wash away the sweat in the afternoon. And I met 4 wonderful, funny and outrageously confident women, all powerhouses in their own right. Our 5-strong lady tribe found secluded spots to sunbathe nude every day, and talk got around the camp, and boys begged unsuccessfully to be invited. And these women gave me a new, true sense of empowerment, more than any recent sexual relationship or sexual encounter had. And people in the camp, one particular straight macho man, a rooster of some sort, could only assume one reason that such confident single women were not attracted to him. Of course, we must be a gaggle of lesbians. Nothing to do with the fact that we weren't interested in romance or even sex with a buff male. Nope, them bitches gotta be gay. So we took our badass booties on a 5-day lady hike together, and it was a bonding ritual that only seemed right that we were all women. The days were tough but stunning, twinkling ocean views and endless winding uneven paths. We kept each other's spirits up and lifted each other over uprooted obstacles. On the 3rd night of the hike, we settled into a campsite in the woods. The ground that day was like a foot spa, squelchy sand and soft mud, followed by sharp, loose shells and exfoliating rocks, perfect for our hard-working feet. Our one lowly neighbour, a 19-year-old guy, all shy and polite and evidently intimidated by this flock of women taking over his peaceful, solitary setup. We heckled him to join our rowdy table, of course. And girls being girls and girls camping, the conversation quickly led to boys. And we went around the circle, delving into all the details, much to our young companions' bewilderment and, dare I say, delight. And it got to his turn, and from the absence of his story, came across, after witnessing some very saucy stories, that he'd never actually kissed a girl. So, okay, obviously we had to fix this kissing thing. So we put on an appropriate mood tune, you know, Edwyn Collins, I've never met a girl like you before. And around the table, this merry camper travelled to kiss not 1, but 5 hugely confident women, twice. You know, the first time was too bad to let him get away with, and we insisted he did it properly, i.e. slower and not so much teeth, please. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the next day was Valentine's Day. Our confidence was overflowing, our lady tribe was strong, the nature filled us with a sense of freedom, and life was carefree. It wasn't a man that I'd needed the whole time to make me feel good about myself and my body. It was just being with myself and being with women on my level. Having friends who get you can make you glow with confidence. So, as a tribute to the God of love that day, and really to ourselves, feeling safe and appreciated in our little lady bubble, we all decided it was only right to hike Starkers for the rest of the trail. We looked over to the ocean with our muffs to the wind, armed around each other, our little naked lady tribe who had dragged body confidence out of the earth and took it on an adventure, with boys only showing up to the table as gossip. Your body is really a beautiful and fabulous thing to flaunt. Have fun with it, but it's only when you connect to it yourself and you truly start to appreciate it and you surround yourself with others who do and who complement themselves and you, no matter what size, shape or form we all are, and your body confidence will shine out loud and proud.
Very nice.
Sweet.
That's
What?
amazing.
What do you mean, Rebecca? I did. That's my friend. I already introduced her. Janae's saying I missed some like detail about our friendship, but I'll let you wonder if I was there or not. But yeah, so yeah, that's Cheryl Hickey. She actually is an international guide in Europe right now, but obviously not doing any international travels. So she has an open schedule and was able to hop on and record that. But she couldn't stay up till 2 a.m. What a baby. Anyway, it is 7:45. And we have more stories for you, but we do want to take a break because we are hoping to get some other folks on after 8 o'clock. So there are the people who are lined up. Don't worry. Please don't go very far away, but we're going to take a 10-minute break. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go back to gallery view. Can everybody? No, you still see me. How do I cancel spotlight video?
There you go.
But
something like that.
No,
I
we still see.
No.
Here we go. No, 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 yes, no. Are you having fun yet? This is our first. Oh wait, we see Steve. So wait.
That's just because he was talking.
Okay. Can't I share it?
Very.
Maybe
Well, you can hit at the top for yourself. You can hit gallery view.
Actually, if you're in our
I'm seeing it on
attendees.
Facebook.
Oh, it shows the grid on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Oh, we got Jesse's here too. Okay.
Now it's just you.
No,
Okay, now it's grid.
oh, there's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
That's hard to tell. Well, yeah, so we are going to take a 10-minute break. Panelists, do hang out, unmute yourselves if you want to talk like we were schmoozing beforehand. I'm already thinking I'm going to tell a different story because that's what I do when I'm drinking wine and hosting storytelling. And yes, thank you, people who can see all of us. This is good. Oh, look at this whole new interface. If you're in our webinar on Zoom, thank you. You're helping us kind of figure out if this is.
Yes, if you're not going to go and take a little bit of a break, please, let's do a roll call. Let's see. Facebook people that are in Facebook land, please chat on there. Let us know you're here. People in the Zoom world, please use the chat function and let us know that you're here as well. It's great to see that we've got an audience on both platforms. They're very different, but very, very cool to see the difference between the two. Facebook, you have a little bit of a delay, just to let you know. So yeah, we're gonna take a little bit of a break. Get yourself another drink, restroom.
Yeah, and feel free to tell us about a time that you spoke out. There were definitely some people who wrote in our chat, so we'll highlight that
Yes.
when we come back. But if you have to pee.
Kat has commented, Amy has commented. You guys have commented. Yes, please share a time where you've had to speak out loud.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll be right back.
We're having more fun than we thought.
Yeah.
So Steve, again, thank you for your coaching because that was very necessary, I think.
You've done great. This is looking really cool.
Yeah. And we're recording too. So if, your cousin didn't get to see it and you're like, oh, they would love this. Or like, Dad, I know you have stories. I'm talking to you, Barry Goldman. Feel free to share one with us later. Maybe not tonight. I probably want to know what you're going to say. But I'm just glad to see people from all over. Maybe even if you want to throw in the chat, like where you're from, maybe where you're from originally. It's just kind of cool for us to see. And maybe the closest you're going to get to another human in the next couple weeks. So
I'm from Los Angeles.
Oh, you're actually from LA?
Yes.
I just think I thought you were. I knew you liked the Dodgers. Don't get me wrong.
Yes,
I did
I
not
understand.
not know that.
Yeah.
Brooklyn.
Yeah. 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 They broke hearts in LA when they moved. They broke hearts in LA too when they moved. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
they're Brooklyn Dodgers. When did they stop being Brooklyn Dodgers? I feel like
1958.
Oh, maybe not. Maybe not.
Yes, we've got panelists dropping on and off. We have Debbie and Barry of Toronto. Kat is there. Niles, hi. No. Nils, sorry, Nils. I knew that. That's why I looked at
Oh
Nils.
shoot, Stacy, I got it. Hang on. Sorry. So while we're taking our intermission, I'm obviously still trying to multitask.
Amy's from New York. That is fabulous. We have quite the variety of people. We've got Kim, which is Kim's from Paulsbo area.
Not originally, but that's where she is now.
Yes.
Hang on,
Someone earlier that said they were from New York too.
Yes, Amy.
Amy?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe Carlos, you can tell. Where are you from? I know where you're from, but you know what I mean. Like you can tell
the people
where you're from in New York.
Born in Columbia, raised in Queens, New York, and have traveled across the country to the West Coast. Wyoming, Colorado, South Dakota. They were all homes at one point.
Yeah.
So did you I know, I'm like, can I just talk? That's
Can I
always
forever?
did you see the new hearing, the Supreme Court ruling today for the reservation lands in Oklahoma?
They ruled in favor, right?
Yeah. So basically, almost the whole eastern half of the state of Oklahoma is now back to its original reservation land. And so this was land that the natives were led to on the Trail of Tears. And they've been fighting and trying to get heard by the Supreme Court for a lot of years. But through the case today, basically the Supreme Court acknowledged that they had not been, and I'm going to say this wrong because it does not feel like a correct word, disreservationed, basically is what the word was that they kept saying in the article. I was like, that doesn't feel like a real word to me because I've never heard it. But the federal government had never dissolved the original 5-tribe reservation in Oklahoma, which is the whole eastern half of the state. I was so interested, of course, then, because I'm interested in most things political, and went back and looked, and the lines are crazy. The repercussions of that is crazy. But one of the justices said, really kind of struck me, that the United States government had not adhered to its original promises. And they found no reason, because they legally had not disreservationed the land. And so it goes back to the tribe. I'm like so excited to see how this plays out. It's probably, in my opinion, one of the most important Supreme Court rulings in years. So I don't know if you guys heard about that yet, but that was super exciting today.
I appreciate the explanation, and I think you're probably right that over the next several years, we're going to come to realize how important this decision was.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it was a 5-4 decision, one assenting, and there was 2 dissenting opinions. And it was all based on the legal ramifications of what returning it meant. But the assenting view for the decision was basically like, it doesn't matter. There's no legal proof that they ever dissolved it, which was the whole word disreservationed. Really just caught me. So yeah, there was no evidence that it had ever been dissolved. So it goes back to the 5 original tribes that the reservation land was given to during the Trail of Tears. And I obviously am very uneducated about any of that. But boy, it gave me, I think I went down 2.5-hour rabbit hole reading about it.
Nice.
So I'm
Yeah.
telling Stace to come here.
It's very, very interesting.
All I can think of is all the angry white people in Oklahoma right now. Just fucking livid. Like, people here are livid that Sklallam tribe has buildings, let alone a tribe has half of Oklahoma.
Not as much as you think. They're just the ones with the stool that can stand up and scream the loudest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Oh my god.
Almost 10 minutes
Right.
already.
Yeah, well, we'll give it
We're
another
getting
second.
close. We're giving a few more minutes to come on back.
And I guess,
we will get to it.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm like talking to everybody, but I mean, I'm
Yeah.
assuming our audience is, you're having a snack, you're using the toilet still, and just so Jesse, we're gonna have you go. We got Stacy. Stacy's connecting. Great. So I'm gonna do my little like after lunch talk, and then we'll have Stacy, and then Jesse, you're gonna close us out. And but yeah, we can't hear you, Stacy. Come here. Just come here. We're social distancing everybody who's watching from home, but Stacy,
She
come
just
here.
has to unmute it.
No, she's not muted.
But she's not muted, but we still can't hear you, Stacy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
You guys can hear me though, right?
I don't
Yes.
think she. Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect.
Gabby, you're here. What do you think so far? Can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, yay! Then I can.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, there's Stacy. Good, 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 good. Perfect.
Okay, well,
ahead,
and
second
we're
round.
so prompt. We're not normally this prompt.
Well,
Okay.
it's different.
I know, it's like 2 hours of Zoom. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Yes, bring it to me to start dropping the F-bombs. I'll spotlight myself while I continue to swear. For those of you who don't know me, you should already know me if you're already here, because I only have like 15 friends, and I'm pretty sure you're all online right now. So yes, thank you again. Just to recap, if you just tuned in, we're doing a theme tonight of Out Loud and Proud. And normally we do a slam, and I already can't remember because it goes by so fast. If we talk about what we normally do, we do like competition type events. It's open mic, anybody can come up. And we love having other people pop in, even if at any point you want to join in. You can still do it during these live events. A little trickier, obviously, with the webinar platform, but we really invite anybody to get up on stage and ramble like I'm doing right now. But I was like, when Janae and I host, we always try to think of like our own connections and anecdotes that we want to share. And we're two cis white females who don't really have a whole lot, I feel like, but we don't feel like we have the authority. I'm speaking for both of us.
Yes,
like
you're right.
Janae's my like squim wife. But we don't feel like we have the authority to tell other people's stories. And that's really what this is too, being like first person true stories. We always say like, it shouldn't be a story about somebody else. Now it can be your relationship to that other person. And that was what I was originally going to speak about tonight. But now I'm going to go on. Yeah.
Okay.
Because of what we were talking about earlier. I'm like, yeah, well, maybe I'll talk about it later if we got time and people want to hear it. But we got talking about disclosure earlier, and it's mainly because I watched a Netflix movie, which is how, everybody gets their information these days is videos. At least it wasn't YouTube. But I watched Disclosure, and for those of you who don't know what it is, it's a Netflix film about trans identity, and it's trans identity in the media specifically, and it's produced by trans people who are in the media. But the idea of disclosure itself was something I wasn't familiar with, and I didn't really know why they picked that title for the film, but it became clear, as they go on, and the idea is that you have to tell someone that you are trans, right? That is your identity, and that if you don't, you're being deceitful, right? Like if they wait too long, they've now lied. They didn't tell someone that they were trans. And my connection to this isn't in obviously being trans. Well, maybe not obviously. Maybe it's something I need to disclose. This is why it's an interesting idea. But for me, I'm Jewish, right? And I guess why I'm telling the story now is that earlier, one of our tellers, Max, who had to check out, but he was a teller earlier this evening, was like, you probably get asked all the time, what are you? And I do, because people look at me and they see like dark features. I could be Italian. I could be Greek. I could be Jewish, I could be Muslim, I could be a lot of things. And generally I think I look kind of Mediterranean, but what am I? But people don't generally see that, because really by default, I'm still white, guys. I get to be white. Like, what a privilege. It really is a privilege. But my first experience maybe not feeling that way was in Fredericton, New Brunswick, in Eastern Canada. And I was there for Shiva for my grandfather. And what that is when somebody dies in the Jewish tradition, all the family gets together for a week and you grieve collectively. And it's really a lot of storytelling, which is why I love doing this. But I was there with a lot of my family and one of my cousins who is close in age to me, but he is more religious than I am. And he looks Jewish in that he wears a kippah, right? Like, you see a kippah, you know that person is Jewish, right? A little hat to a lot of people who are not familiar with other people of the Jewish faith. But he and I were walking around, and I will literally never forget this moment, because I grew up in Toronto. It's a very progressive city where there are lots of Jewish people, lots of different cultures and communities, and you just see it all everywhere, and you never think that you're different or that that is different, because everybody's different, right? Like, so being in Fredericton and walking around with my cousin who's wearing his kippah, and there was a car that drove by us, and he was like, "Fucking kikes." And I was like, I mean, I didn't even have to look around. I knew they were yelling at us. And they weren't, I mean, they were yelling at me, but they were yelling at my cousin because he's wearing a yarmulke, because it had just been me. They might not have said anything. And it was like the first time that I was like, oh, anti-Semitism, that's not just what I read about in the Holocaust. Like, that's a real thing. And I'm not comparing being Jewish as something I need to disclose in the same way as being trans, but I just feel like we're so politically correct these days. Everybody wants to come forth with what they are. And to me, being Jewish is not something I'm ashamed of. And in fact, it's something I like to disclose. Out here, I'm quite exotic. There are not very many Jewish people. And I doubt there are people here who would think that me not saying that I'm Jewish is like withholding something. But there's definitely been places where I've been, again, I'm saying this earlier, which is why I decided to tell the story. I was in Turkey with a friend of mine, and we were like, do we say we're Jewish here? Like, we had to really think about whether or not we wanted to tell that to people. And so I can't imagine being a trans person. And I think to be a trans person, it becomes part of your identity, right? Like, being Jewish is kind of part of my identity. And I think if you're trans and you've lived through that experience, it is part of your identity, but you're not obligated to tell people. But I think we live in this community and society where it's expected that you share that. I don't think there's a right answer, to be clear. I'm wrong a lot of the time anyway, but education. Yeah, that's how we learn, right?
Education.
And just because I look this way doesn't mean you're gonna know what I am, and it doesn't mean that you have to either. That's kind of my experience, I guess. I don't know, thanks. So bad at telling my own stories when I'm like in between hosting. But anyway, I'm just like so happy to like talk to friends. And for those of you who are watching from afar, like, again, everybody who's telling tonight, I consider a friend. Janae and I have become closer through storytelling, and we've become closer to all the people who are telling tonight. And so we're really, really grateful to have you all here as attendees and tellers. And so our next teller, oh, what do you want me to say?
All the welcome for everybody that just logged on.
Okay.
We got new viewers.
We got new viewers. Janae wants me to be professional. I'm not very good at that and had too much wine. All right, so again, we're Out Loud, and tonight we're the Out Loud and Proud Story Slam, but we are always out loud because we don't know how to shut up. And we are hosting in partnership, again, thanks to PARJC, which is the Port Angeles Racial Justice Collective. So, and really Carlos, who told earlier, thank you again for getting us motivated to share these kind of stories this evening. Whatever these kind. Thank you for being humans, and thank you for telling your honest truths with us. Anyway. I need to start introducing the next teller.
Do it.
Our next teller this evening, are you ready, girl? It's our friend Stacy Sevier. She is a badass chef and wonderful lady. I'm gonna spotlight you because you didn't tell me what else to say for our intro, but she's fine. Here she is, Stacy Sevier.
Hey, baby. So, one, super glad to be here. Two, I super appreciate you guys, and you guys even putting this platform up to, just have this safe space for people to be able to communicate, their stories and share their life experiences. I am going to share an experience from when I was in middle school. it does tie into when I got older and began to vote with my mother. And it pretty much starts with the perspective of that I've been incredibly blessed. I don't consider myself a very religious person. I consider myself pretty much on the spiritual level of just like, there's something out there and it does things for everybody, and that's just kind of how the world works. I believe more in Mother Nature, but I find that unlike Mother Nature herself, who can be very unforgiving, our own parents can be very unforgiving sometimes. And I think with the topic of Loud and Proud, I wanted to share my experience of when I came out to my mother when I was in middle school, when I thought that I was, and it's crazy that I even just said that I thought that I was bisexual. I am bisexual, and I still hold that feeling of uncertainty and being scared to express that to other people and having the judgment that comes along with that. Once again, I've been very blessed to not feel the burden of like, if I tell my parents, I will have nowhere to go. I will be disowned by not only my family and my community, but your friends, everything. I guess that entitles the community. I was getting picked up by my mother one day, and we were on our way home, and I remember being in her green Ford Bronco, and it was definitely after 8 or 9 o'clock, and we were pulling up to our driveway to get our mail, and I had this moment of like, fuck it, I'll just tell her. I think I'm bisexual. I don't quite know, because I had not been sexually active at that point, but I knew what I liked, and it was that moment of, is this what I really want? And if I do, then I have to be sure that when I'm telling it to my mom, that I'm confident in it. And I've always, once again, been blessed of feeling like I have a mother that raised 3 children on her own, and she always let us know when we were growing up that you can tell me anything. If you ever have an issue going on, you can tell me anything. If you're ever feeling insecure, you can tell me anything. And as I got older, I realized that some parents don't really mean that you can tell me anything. And I don't really believe in horoscopes, but I've come to find that with certain people, it does hold tried and true. Some horoscopes, like Geminis, excuse my language, are fucking crazy. Nessa, you're not going to be the only one to drop the F-bomb, because Geminis are fucking crazy. And my mom is probably one of the most back and forth human beings I've ever met. When I was growing up, my mom let me know, if you do anything to fuck up your situation, I will kick you out of this house. But she also let me know, you always have somewhere to go. I'll always support you. I'll always love you. I'll always take care of you. I'll always, you can tell me anything. But then there was moments where I'd be like, hey, I think I'm bisexual. And that dreaded phase came upon my ears of, it's just a phase. And you're like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure that this is how I feel. And your parent goes, no, it's just a phase. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, okay, yeah, my true emotions, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I remember that night when my mother and I were checking the mail on that driveway at that time during that situation, and I didn't realize that my MP3 player that I had at the time was on record. And so this MP3 player I had, it's not even a name brand like iPod or anything, because we were so fucking poor when I was growing up, had recorded this situation. So I come out to my mom. I'm pretty sure I'm bisexual. I had a girlfriend at the time, which she still doesn't know about to this day. Nikki, beautiful human being. And years go by, I at least like 10, and I find this MP3 player in an old box that had just been shoved away in some package, and just all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, this MP3, and I start going through the music, and I find a random recording. It's like recording, it had a random number, like 943. It looked like pot, 3.14 dash. And I go to play it, I was like, oh, it's pi, you know, the equation to being bisexual or whatever. No. I go to record, like to listen to it, and I realize that this is the recording from like 10 to 12 years ago, and I just hear rustling. Mom, I think I'm bisexual, and her going, it's just a phase, and I just stopped listening to it. And I remember being like, holy shit, this was over a decade ago, and I'm still the same human. I still feel the same way. It's not just a phase. And it was very scary to feel that moment. Because it wasn't, I knew you were wrong. It was, I knew I was right and my feelings were correct. And I followed my gut, and I knew that my body was right in the feelings that I had. It was a lack of exposure to my mother, I think, for her to not accept that. So that kind of got dropped, and it was never talked about again, and she never addressed it, regardless of any girl or guy that was coming to stay the night with me. Oh, it's just a girlfriend. Mom, it's a girlfriend. And years down the line, I became a voter, turned 18. And I remember when we got our voting pamphlets or ballots or whatever, my mom was like, hey, we should vote together. We should, just, sit down and go through all of it together. And I was like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And so we sit down to start voting, and it was like, all right, first bill, this and food stamps or something, support. This bill, support or not support, whatever. And then it came to the gay marriage bill. And I remember being like, all right, yeah, gay marriage, hell yeah. And she looks at me and she goes, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, what? Like, absolutely gay people should get married. And she goes, what the fuck are you saying? I was like, what the fuck are you saying right now? Like, how are we disagreeing on this? And the pretext of that conversation was a year prior, my mother, who's against gay marriage in this conversation, invited me to go to her ex-boyfriend's house at the time to meet two of her best friends that was a gay couple. I ended up becoming great friends with this couple, Bill and Galen. They were the most beautiful human beings I've ever met. Those were her best friends at the time. A year later, when we're going to vote, she's still best friends with Bill and Galen. She's like, oh, let's vote, gay, yes or no for gay marriage. And I was like, yay, gay marriage. And she's like, no. And I couldn't fucking believe the words that were coming out of her mouth. You realize that you support these two human beings, who they are, the union that they have, and you're about to say to me right now, to your daughter as my role model, that they shouldn't get married. I'm so blown away by her at this moment of like, you are the truest Gemini I've ever fucking met. Like, who are you? I don't even know who you are. Like, this is crazy. And then it came to me, like, this is just how she was raised. And there's this certain generation, certain generations, and not everybody that is in that generation applies, but it's the generation she was raised in, where it's just not right. When I went yes on gay marriage, she went, absolutely not. And I was like, how can you say that? And she goes, Stacy, marriage is a union between a man and a woman. That is what marriage means. If two gay people want to get married, they need to call it something else, not marriage. And that blew me away, because part of me is like, haven't you already been divorced? Like, you weren't even married 2 or 3 years? You got pregnant with me, got married to my father, divorced him before I was 2, and you want to preach to people about how they can't get married because they'll probably have a lesser divorce rate than you. That blew me away. But I come to realize that I've been so unbelievably blessed when it comes to the idea of who my parent is when I came to coming out to them. I could have came out to my mother and she could have been like, get out of my house. I do not want to recognize you as my child. I will never talk to you again. That has been the situation for several close friends of mine. They come out to either their foster parents or adoptive parents or real parents of, I'm gay, or I'm trans, or I just don't know what I am. And I had several friends that just didn't have anywhere to go at the end of the night. And my mom was always that person that was like, if you have a friend that doesn't have anywhere to go, they can come to my home. They can come to our home. But then she wouldn't support gay marriage. It was the most unbelievable, like, back and forth of cross support. I couldn't believe it. And to this day, I mean, it's very hard to deal with some of the things she says because she can be so contradictory on her own points when it comes to gay marriage, when it comes to, like, I just researched what it means to be cisgendered. What is the definition of that? And finding out that I'm cisgender and truly understanding those titles. And to my mother, that's very intimidating because that's not what she grew up in. And so in this moment of time in history, I've been very proud to come out and say I'm bisexual. But I've also been very grateful that I have had the most cushioned, like the most softened version of coming out to my mom, or not even just like my family. Like, I don't even think my brother fucking knows. And it's a situation of you come out to your parents and they're immediately like, get out of my house. I don't recognize who you are. You will never be my child again. And that's something that I'll never know, and I'm grateful to know, but I can't wait in the future to support the people around me that need that comfort, that need that sense of, I'm here for you and you're not wrong in feeling how you feel, and there are people out there that love you. And as I'm trailing on, I'm sorry, but I thought it was so cool that there's certain people that rent themselves out to certain gay weddings, or not even gay weddings, it's mothers, I don't remember the name of it, but it's like Mothers for Gays or something. And the situation is, if you have been disowned by your family and you're wanting to get married, I will walk you down the aisle and I will be there in replacement to support you and love you and care for you, because I will treat you like my own child, even if you're not. And I always thought that was such a beautiful thing. So out of the Loud and Proud, I'm loud and proud to be myself and to support my friends around me, because I couldn't imagine going through a worse scenario. And it was easy for me. And I've grown up in a very easy environment, and to be somebody that has it so much harder, I couldn't imagine. So that's my story.
Thank you,
girl.
You know, this is so much about education.
I'm gonna go.
I can lean in.
Okay,
I'll lean
yeah,
in.
you just come over here.
So much about education. I just learned something. So I thought a cisgendered white.
So here's what it was. I'm just gonna read.
Do it, please. Please speak for me.
This is what happened while you were telling. He was
me.
like, wait a minute. She's like, can she be bi and cisgendered? And I'm like, yeah, because cisgender refers to gender orientation, whereas sexual orientation, whole other spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's so. And this is the
And
perfect
we don't
segue,
know
which
these
is-
things unless
I'm
somebody
taking away
tells
from
us. Oh, okay. She's like,
That's what I do when I host. I always think about my segues into the next teller, and also how I'm going to comment on it. But I was going to tell just briefly about so I taught sex education to middle school students.
oh yeah.
And I have a student who's Jehovah's Witness, and his family, when it came, like he started, okay, I'll give you the scenario. Basically, I literally gave students scenarios. It was like two people in the story. It was like Jesse and Chris. They were non-gendered names. Jesse can both be a boy or a girl. Chris can be a boy or a girl. And it was like Jesse and Chris one of them had an unrequited crush on the other. And my one student, the scenario was about how to deal with an unrequited crush. My student couldn't get over the fact that they were two non-gendered names and thought they were gay. And he was like, it made him very uncomfortable to talk about this gay relationship. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I get it. He's like, it's just not right. It's just not right. Like he was hung up like Stacy's mom. And sounds like in a way like, there are lines that are drawn. Marriage is this, relationships are this. They are binary, right? And so for my student, I was like, well, love doesn't really work like that. I'm like, but let's just say that Jesse and Chris are two boys or two girls. I'm like, how does that impact your life? right? Like, and I had him think about it. I was like, let's just even say this. Let's say the bag boy at the grocery store is gay. How does that impact your life? Like, what does that change for you? And he was like, well, like nothing. He's like, but then he goes back into the spiral, right? Like, it's not right. It's not right. And I was just like, well, I'm like, that's fine if you don't think it's right. And I believe me, I know my role as a teacher is very precarious. I have to be very delicate with these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Even this, yeah, maybe I'm speaking out. Bye-bye, Squim School District. But it was, I don't care, because I really don't, because believe me, they had a huge settlement for something less than this, so I'll be laughing all the way to the bank if they're going to fire me for telling a story about how I taught sex ed to students. Because it was literally a discussion about how does it affect your life, right? I really believe that, I mean, seriously, even when it comes to drugs, if you want to do drugs and that's your thing, like, I don't even know why we have laws for that, but that's a whole other aside. Janae,
I want a storytelling thing about that.
about doing drugs?
Well, maybe not storytelling, but yeah, seriously.
Well, we have more conversation. There are more
Exactly.
we had.
Let's go offline.
I'm totally all that to say that, yeah, so I'm back to my class with my student. I was like, how does it affect your life? And he's like, it really doesn't. And I was like, great. I'm like, that's the only place we need to be, is like, if it doesn't change your life, it shouldn't bother you, right? Like, you don't have to think it's right. I'm not here to change your mind about what's right and what's wrong, especially with religious rights, because it really is a very complex lens that we look through when you incorporate religion. But we're all humans and we're all individuals. So if my life doesn't affect your life, it shouldn't bother you. That's all I have to say. Anyway, on that note, our next storyteller is Gabrielle. Can I say your last name, Samwald? And if it's too late if I said it wrong, so I'm very sorry if I did. You're going to have to unmute yourself. I'm going to put you on the spotlight. So Gabrielle is a mom in Port Angeles. She's new to our Story Slam. This is our very first time on our stage, virtual or otherwise. So please give a round of applause for Gabrielle.
Hello. So I have major ADHD and needed to prepare for this. I'm gonna read what I prepared. Bisexual, demisexual, polyamorous. For as long as I can remember, I've been obsessed with finding the perfect labels, something definitively expressive that encompasses all that I am in a word. Every time I found a new label that fit, be it punk, woman, mother, artist, singer, etc., I rejoiced. Another hidden piece of my identity revealed on my youthful journey to self-discovery. I remember the moment I realized I liked girls. I was 12 years old at summer camp playing Truth or Dare with my fellow adolescent females. The girls were fascinated by a new camper who was the first of us to have ever been kissed by a boy. As we ran out of truth questions to ask each other, we started daring each other to kiss with or without tongue for 10 to 30 seconds, depending on how brave we were. While the girls took turns kissing, the rest of us would chant the countdown aloud. When the time ran out, the two girls would recoil in disgust and immediately wash out their mouths. Then it was my turn to kiss the new camper, 30 seconds with tongue. She coached me on what to do with my mouth before we started the countdown. All I remember thinking is my tongue gently brushed hers with it. This girl was beautiful, with giant blue eyes, an athletic physique, soft blonde curls, and big pillowy Angelina Jolie lips, like clouds. When the chanting stopped, she pulled away and smiled, and I stuttered, thank you for the lesson? Inside, I was thinking, what's the big deal to the other girls? That was kind of nice. A year later, I came out to my closest and most supportive friends, then my parents. Then I changed my MySpace status bio and made my newfound sexual orientation official. I started dating boys at 14, but it wasn't until I was 15 and had my first girlfriend that I remember the thrill of my camp days. In the following 12 years as I grew up, I discovered that while I preferred having a stable primary domestic relationship with a man, that women still caught my eye even more so than guys did, and I still craved a deeper connection with a female than friendship. That's when I learned about polyamory. I like to describe polyamory as the art of loving or being in love with more than one person at a time. The thing about it is some people are hardwired that way and some are not. I experimented unsuccessfully with poly relationships for years with a partner whose ideals differed from mine. You see, there are many different ways to practice polyamory. Some choose to have multiple casual partners. Some choose to have a primary partnership and consider any external relationships secondary, focusing their time and energy into their primary relationship first. Some choose not to label or define their relationships. I had one secondary partner who was thrilled when we decided to switch our relationship status from companions to boyfriend and girlfriend. He proposed to his primary partner. My boyfriend delighted in introducing us to old friends as his fiance/future wife and girlfriend. His now wife and I have always been good friends, and she put a lot of time and effort into convincing us to start a secondary relationship on top of our developing friendship. Without her encouragement, I don't think that relationship would have been nearly as successful as it was. I've never been an openly sexual person. While I am open about my sexuality, I prefer to keep what happens between me and my partners private. I've never had a one-night stand. I've never had casual sex with someone I didn't have love for, vice versa. Turns out there's a word for this too, demisexual, when you don't experience sexual attraction without an emotional connection. This is considered part of the ACE spectrum. For those who don't know, ACE stands for asexual and defines those who don't experience sexual attraction the same as the general populace. While I am now in a stable, developing hetero relationship with a man who I wholly am devoted to, I still crave attention, or better yet, connection with women from time to time. This urge quieted when I met a woman last year who knocked me off my high horse. For the sake of privacy, I'll call her Scarlett. Scarlett was married to a lovely man who also encouraged her to have relationships outside of theirs. She also hadn't been in a relationship with a woman in many years, despite a few close encounters with them. Scarlett awoke a fire in me that I had almost forgotten existed. I hadn't caught feelings for a woman this strongly since I fell in love with her so hard and so fast it became a challenge to balance the new relationship energy with my primary partner. Through honesty, open communication between my partner and I, Scarlett and I, her and her husband, and me and her husband, and our male partners, we made it work for several months, and we were a happy little polycule, which is what you call a group of people that are in an assortment of polyamorous relationships. While Scarlett and I chose to split amicably and on good terms, while she goes on her own journey of self-discovery, she was a necessary reminder that being bisexual, demisexual, and polyamorous are pivotal parts of my identity. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Gabby.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo.
That was great. You know, I love how you defined the terms for us too, because I even had to look it up again because I was like demisexual. I'm like, I've heard it. It's one of the, I mean, I understand it. I don't necessarily experience it all the time, but the idea that you need an emotional bond to have a sexual connection with a person, I think most people look at it themselves probably even that way, but wouldn't have the words to put to it. So thank you. That was very brave of you to get on our virtual stage. It is, I don't know if everybody's on here earlier, but Carlos mentioned how it was more nerve-wracking to do this somehow. And it is because the thing that I'm missing the most about when we do these events is the shared experience with the audience, which is why we chose to keep the audio on for our panelists, for other storytellers. And I mean, honestly, with our huge audience tonight, we could have totally kept everybody's audio on and just like had our own event. But really, like we want to share, like there's something about like feeling the stories that other people share. And I think even if you're on our virtual landscape right now, like you're really feeling what the other people are saying, which is why we tell stories, which is why Janae and I are so close, because we're so different from each other. If like if you met us individually, you'd be like, you two are friends, and we'd be like, we're best friends.
It's crazy.
But I think it's because of our like very profound differences in the way that we communicate, because that is like our strength. We're together, not social distancing. She's my bubble. I go crazy without
they
her.
say that you're not really best friends until people think you're gay. So it works.
100%.
Okay, so we have one last storyteller tonight, and then Janae and I will probably squeeze onto the same screen if you can't tell we're together, and ramble a little more. But our final storyteller this evening is Jesse Charles. He has been on our stage in person many times. We are so, so grateful for him. He's a comedian, he's a storyteller, he's a poet, he is a wonderful human, and we're so glad to have him on stage. Give it up for Jesse Charles.
Thank you. Yeah, I can agree with Carlos on that. It does feel a lot more nerve-wracking, especially with the Celebrity Square Zoom thing that we all have going on. Now that my work a lot of it is consumed by Zoom and everything. I really wish I would have taken the time to invest in this before things hit the fan, but it's the way it is. So I'm gonna do my best to keep it light tonight. I feel with the way things are going in the world, the last thing we need is a depressing Jesse out here telling you to feel bad about your life. So I'm going to do my best to hopefully make some people laugh here. So I remember I looked at the description of the event today, Out Loud and Proud, as someone who's cisgendered too, who's had some curiosities in his life. I'll be honest with that. I was like, what am I gonna really tell? And so I managed to throw something together today. I was, trying to crank it out. I got a lot of stuff going on with work and life, but reading that saying you guys had there, that was, we may not be in the same boat, but we're all in this together. That really, it hit me because especially, it sounds like something that's from recovery. It might be from recovery. I wouldn't doubt it, but the way it sounds like, the one day at a time thing and stuff like that. And so that really spoke to me. So I was like, I'll work off that. And, because for me, I wouldn't say as much that I was in a boat as much as I've been in a life raft for most of my life. And that sense of togetherness is something that, I've always longed for, but never really been a part of. I was the odd kid out most of the time, the loner. I still am. I mean, you can't tell by this demographic, but I feel like, there's not too many 30-year-olds doing, storytelling when we're actually doing this live. It's, yeah, I know Nessa's here, but I'm just saying, when it's, there's the median range is, more than that way, but, and so, yeah, and, definitely,
No.
but, definitely growing up in PA, it was the same way too, I was, you say a poet. Back then I was trying to be a rapper in a town that does not have a rap scene. It's not like I was trying to be a gangster rapper or anything. There's no guns here unless you got your, rifle to go hunting. But I was trying to start a scene that didn't exist. Also in high school, I dressed differently too. I mean, I wore sweater vests and suit jackets. What fucking kid in high school wears sweater vests unless they're like part of a private school? Or, they have a boat with a butler named Chauncey or some shit. And so, and then even then, back at that age, I was pretty comfortable with my sexuality, although I didn't really even know it at the time. And, I was like that scene in Dumb and Dumber where the couple walks by and they're like, nice. And they're like, that dude must work out. Because I would compliment people. And, for me, I was comfortable with doing that. Saying that to other guys was natural to me. I just didn't realize that it was, a weird thing to do. I would always compliment other guys and stuff. And so, but then, we fast forward a little bit and, I get to college and just like, most kids do in college, I experimented, mostly with drugs, but, I dipped my pinky toe into other things. And I remember one night I was at a bar, maybe it was a party. I don't know, the liquor was flowing and I was talking with this guy and we were just getting in this real deep conversation. And I don't even remember what it was about, but I was just so stoked, because when I went to parties, again, I was odd person out. I'd be the person petting the dog or the cat that was in the corner. And they're like, what the fuck's that? What's that guy's deal? And it's just like, he's just playing with the animals. And then I remember just talking to this guy and then all of a sudden he just goes in for the kiss. And I didn't pull away immediately. Like most people, most guys would have been like, ugh, but I let it happen and I was like, I'm going to see how this plays out. But probably was maybe 5 seconds and, in my head it felt like 5 minutes. Again, who knows? The liquor was there. So it could have been 5 minutes for all I know. But I was like, you know what? This isn't for me. And I just kind of noped out of that situation. I was like, time for Jesse to head home. Had a little too much. And then with the way that my mind is, I reflected on that moment quite a bit. like, yeah, that didn't feel right to me. But then I started overthinking it a lot, and I was like, well, maybe he was just a bad kisser. And so that got me thinking about, yeah, it does. And then this got me thinking about all the other things in my life that I've just based off one bad experience. Like maybe that one time when I was in preschool and I ate those string beans and threw up on the table, maybe they were just bad string beans. Or, maybe I shouldn't have given up on snowboarding the one time my friends took me up to the ridge. And, it was a very steep part. And the first ride I went down, I just face planted and scorpion myself with the legs and everything went up behind my head. And after that, I was like, nah, snowboarding ain't for me.
Nope.
And maybe I shouldn't have just tried cocaine once. Maybe cocaine should have been a couple more times just to give it a feel. No, yeah, obviously with my addict behavior, no. But, and then this got me to the point of, the things that, this got me to thinking about the way I choose to look at life every day. And I don't remember, maybe it was in my life I had one bad day, or maybe it's how I choose to look at one day at a time that, this goes back to the beginning of the story, viewing life as a life raft. And for me, it's like, as someone in recovery, it's always brought up, it's that one day at a time thing. It's one way that you view at it. And so for me, it's more now that I look at things now as a more broader perspective. And it's not a life raft, Jesse, it's a boat. And people are there for you, and they're always going to be there for you as long as you're, able to keep yourself open to the opportunities of this world. So, thank you.
Oh my gosh, that was great.
I miss you guys.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Miss Storytelling Live. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. It feeds my soul. I love your stories. They make me laugh so hard.
Yeah, Jesse, I'm so glad we decided to end with you. This is our first time trying to pick our lineup. And we really did try to be deliberate about the order, and it wasn't just who could show up at 7 o'clock and not. I actually the universe provides. It was really, I hope everybody who attended from the outside enjoyed it. I know, I'd say actually most of our panelists this evening are all people who we actually did this kind of earlier during quarantine, during COVID times, after the before.
We had a little Zoom party in the beginning.
We did, and it was food for the soul, but there is something that we're missing about the shared experience. And we were really hoping to do this as a July 4th, it actually kind of came about through conversations with Carlos and Stacy and Janae and myself, which I obviously implied. And we had talked about the concept of American pride and also gay pride and the intersection, and we wanted to just have this opportunity. And so I think it actually turned out for the virtual evening, but we're sad we missed the live. Sorry, I'm talking over you.
No. I interrupted. Please. No, I missed having.
Are you sure too? You're not married. You two aren't married, right?
Like I said, you're not best friends if they don't think you're gay.
That's Janae. Dude, my boss, because I've called you guys Janessa so many times, when he asked about tonight, he goes, "So, is Janessa ready to hear your story?" I was like, "Oh yes, the two of them, the Janessa." Already, yes.
Yes.
But yeah, no, we're actually, wait, hang on. Actually, what I meant to do was this, so we can all see everybody. And I think,
we got some missing.
It's not showing everyone again.
No, we've got people that backed out.
No, but I want everyone to see the grid on Facebook. Oh, Facebook sees the grid. Sorry, so if you haven't already figured it out, Janae and I are together, and we have two computers going. So there's the two computers.
Yes.
The Inception screen.
And it's like a computer within a computer within a computer. So we've been just trying
the phone, which has the Facebook.
So we're just trying to figure out how it looks to everybody. Anyway, if you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you think we could improve, tell us how to fucking do it. And and if you logged in from somewhere else and you're just glad, anyway, I really appreciate there have definitely been people writing in the chat. Amy, thank you so much. It's really cool to see where people are signing in from.
Thank you to Kim for logging on. Kat, she has been there.
Oh, thank you, Ryan Qualls.
Oh, yes. Oh, thumbs up to Janessa. Thank you.
We couldn't do it without each other.
Now the rumors are really start.
That's fine. It's all
Just
true.
kidding, John.
Anyway, we're really happy you're here. Panelists, if you want to stay on, we can powwow afterwards. I feel like we should stop airing. Also, if you're like, this is an hour and a half
I'm
of
done.
Zoom, I'm over it. Like, we have each other, so we'll be fine.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, that's a bye to everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so
Love
much
you.
for coming. I'm going to figure out how to turn this video off. It's